Dr. Jessica Chen pressed her palm against the cold viewport, watching the endless expanse of stars drift past in their eternal dance. The Meridian's discovery had been her pride, a state-of-the-art research vessel designed for deep space exploration, equipped with the most advanced scientific instruments humanity could produce. Now it was little more than a metal coffin, its engines dead, its communication arrays silent, drifting through the void like cosmic debris. "Status report," she called to her team, though she already knew the answer. The same answer they'd been giving for the past 4 months. Dr. Marcus Webb looked up from the engineering console, his usually immaculate beard now unkempt, his eyes bloodshot from countless sleepless nights spent trying to coax life back into their dead systems. "Fusion core is still offline. The cascade failure when we hit that micrometeorite shower took out the primary power couplings. Without the fabrication bay, I can't manufacture the replacement parts we need." Dr. Lila Okafor, their xenobiologist, glanced up from her tablet where she'd been reviewing the same datasets for the 100th time. "Food stores are holding steady for another 6 weeks, maybe 7 if we reduce rations further. Water recycling is at 92% efficiency." She paused, meeting Jessica's eyes. "But we're slowly losing atmosphere through the hull microfractures. Nothing catastrophic yet, but we're dying by degrees," finished Dr. Chen Weiming, their physicist and Jessica's longtime colleague. He floated near the broken navigation console, his weathered hands tracing patterns in the air as he worked through calculations that had become more prayer than science. "At current drift velocity, accounting for gravitational influences, we're heading toward empty space. The nearest star system is 47 light-years away." Jessica closed her eyes and let the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a familiar, unwelcome coat. 47 light-years. Even if they could repair their faster-than-light drive, which they couldn't, that distance represented an impossible gulf. They were 5 scientists in a broken ship, further from home than any human had ever been, with no way to call for help and no hope of rescue. "Dr. Petrov?" she called to their final team member. Dr. Alexei Petrov, their geologist and systems analyst, looked up from where he'd been methodically checking life support readings. His Russian accent seemed thicker now, weighted with exhaustion. "All systems stable for now, but degrading. We have perhaps 2 more months before critical failures begin cascading." He shrugged with the fatalism that had kept him sane these past months. "After that, who can say?" The silence that followed was broken only by the quiet hum of air recyclers and the distant ping of radiation detectors, the mechanical heartbeat of their dying ship. Jessica had been chosen to lead this mission not just for her expertise in astrobiology, but for her ability to make hard decisions under pressure. Now she wondered if those qualifications meant anything when the pressure was the cold vacuum of space and the decision was how to die with dignity. "All right," she said finally, pushing away from the viewport. "We continue with our routine. Marcus, keep working on the power systems. Maybe we can get auxiliary power to the communications array, send out a distress beacon." "Jessica," Marcus said gently, "even if we could transmit, who would hear us out here?" She met his eyes steadily. "Maybe no one. But we're scientists. We keep working until we can't." She looked around at her team, her friends, really, after 3 years of deep space exploration together. "We document everything. Our findings, our situation, what we've learned. Someday, someone might find this ship, and our work shouldn't die with us." The words hung in the recycled air, and Jessica saw her own thoughts reflected in their faces. They weren't just fighting for their lives anymore, they were fighting for their legacy, for the hope that their sacrifice might mean something to future generations of explorers. Dr. Okafor cleared her throat. "I've been working on a comprehensive analysis of the microbial samples we collected from the Centauri system. If we're going to be stuck here, I want to make sure our findings are complete." "Good," Jessica nodded. "Chun, can you double-check our gravitational readings? If we're going to drift for however long we have, I want to know exactly where we're going." "Already on it," the physicist replied. "I've been mapping every gravitational anomaly within sensor range. Most are just brown dwarfs and gas giants, but He hesitated, then shook his head. I'll keep working. Jessica caught the hesitation. But what? Chen Weiming gestured to his display, where a complex stellar map rotated slowly. There's something interesting about 40 million kilometers off our current trajectory. The gravitational signature doesn't match anything in our databases. Could be a rogue planet, or maybe a small black hole, but the readings are unusual. Define unusual, Marcus said, drifting over to peer at the display. The mass reading fluctuates. Not like a variable star or pulsar, more like something is occluding our sensors periodically. And there's something else. Chen highlighted a section of the display. We're detecting trace amounts of electromagnetic radiation from that direction. Very faint, but it's there. The team exchanged glances. After months of seeing nothing but empty space and distant stars, any anomaly was worth investigating. Not that they had much choice in where they went. Their ship was essentially an enormous piece of space junk, following whatever gravitational currents happened to catch them. How long until we drift close enough for detailed scans? Jessica asked. At current velocity, maybe 6 weeks. But if that is a planet, and if it has any kind of atmosphere, our orbit might decay. We could end up making an uncontrolled descent. Dr. Petrov snorted. At this point, uncontrolled descent to a planet sounds better than controlled drift through empty space. Jessica nodded slowly. A planet meant possibilities, materials for repairs, perhaps water or other resources. It also meant the chance of becoming a crater, but that was starting to look like an acceptable risk. All right then. We have 6 weeks to prepare for whatever we find. Marcus, see if you can get our sensors online for detailed scanning. Shen, I want continuous monitoring of that gravitational anomaly. Everyone else, start thinking about what we need for planetary operations. And if it's habitable? Lila asked quietly. Jessica looked around at her team, these brilliant minds who had followed her into the unknown, and now faced the greatest unknown of all. Then we become the first humans to walk on an alien world. If we're going to die, at least we'll die doing something that matters. The weeks that followed blurred together in a haze of preparation and anticipation. Marcus managed to restore partial power to their sensor array, and slowly, tantalizingly, the mystery object began to resolve itself on their displays. It was indeed a planet, roughly Earth-sized, orbiting a dim red dwarf star that barely registered on their instruments. But as they drew closer, the readings became more intriguing. The planet showed signs of a substantial atmosphere, with what appeared to be water vapor and oxygen signatures. The electromagnetic radiation Chen had detected grew stronger, resolving into patterns that seemed almost organized. This is impossible, Lila muttered, staring at the atmospheric composition data. The oxygen levels are too high for a sterile planet. Something has to be producing it. Life? Jessica asked, though she hardly dared hope. Maybe. But this much oxygen, it would take a very active biosphere. More active than Earth's. The planet grew larger in their viewports each day, changing from a distant point of light to a blue-green marble suspended against the stars. Cloud formations swirled across its surface, and through breaks in the cloud cover, they could make out what appeared to be vast landmasses and ocean systems. There, Chen said one morning, pointing at the main display. Do you see that? Jessica squinted at the image. There, on the night side of the planet, were tiny points of light, too regular to be natural phenomena, too concentrated to be random. Those look like... Marcus began, then stopped, unwilling to voice what they were all thinking. Cities, Jessica finished. Those look like cities. The implications hit them like a physical blow. This wasn't just a potentially habitable world, it was a world that was inhabited. After decades of searching for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence, they had stumbled upon what appeared to be an entire civilization. And they were about to crash into it. The Meridian's discovery shuddered as it hit the outer atmosphere of the alien world, its damaged hull groaning under stresses it was never designed to handle. Jessica gripped her command chair, watching helplessly as their descent trajectories shifted wildly across her tactical display. Without engine power, they were completely at the mercy of atmospheric dynamics and gravity. Hull temperature rising, Alexei reported, his voice tight with concentration. But the heat shields are holding. Atmospheric composition is reading. This can't be right. What is it? Jessica called over the growing roar of their descent. Oxygen at 23%, nitrogen at 74%, with trace amounts of argon and carbon dioxide. Jessica, this atmosphere is almost identical to Earth's. Marcus looked up from his station where he'd been desperately trying to restore power to their maneuvering thrusters. That's impossible. The odds of a natural atmosphere matching Earth so closely are astronomical. Unless it's not natural, Lila said quietly. An atmosphere like this would require active maintenance. Oxygen doesn't stay stable at these levels without constant replenishment. The ship bucked violently, and Jessica felt her stomach lurch as they hit a pocket of turbulence. Through the viewport, she could see clouds rushing past at terrifying speed, and below them, the dark surface of an alien ocean. Any luck with the thrusters? She asked Marcus. Negative. But I'm reading massive electromagnetic interference from the planet's surface. Whatever's generating those signals we detected, it's incredibly powerful. Chen Weiming, strapped into his station nearby, was frantically working his instruments. I'm picking up what look like artificial structures on the surface. Geometric patterns, constructed materials. Jessica, I think we're looking at a technologically advanced civilization. And we're about to make a very dramatic first impression, Alexei muttered. Jessica's mind raced through their options. Without power, they couldn't control their descent, but perhaps they could influence it. Marcus, what about the attitude thrusters? Even minimal control might let us aim for that large body of water ahead. I can try to reroute power from life support, but it'll only give us a few seconds of thrust. Do it. As Marcus worked, Jessica opened a ship-wide channel. All hands, prepare for water landing. Seal emergency compartments and prepare emergency equipment for possible evacuation. The minutes that followed were a nightmare of shrieking metal and impossible forces. Jessica watched their altitude drop with sickening speed, 50 kilometers, 30, 20. At 10 kilometers, Marcus managed to fire the attitude thrusters, nudging their trajectory toward the center of what appeared to be a vast inland sea. 5 kilometers, Chen called out. 4, 3, 2. The impact, when it came, was like being hit by a giant's fist. Jessica's restraints cut into her shoulders as the ship skipped across the alien ocean's surface like a stone, each impact sending shockwaves through the hull. Metal screamed and sparked around them, and she could hear the ominous sound of water rushing into damaged compartments. Then, suddenly, they were floating. The violent motion ceased, replaced by the gentle rocking of waves against their hull. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red, and the acrid smell of electrical fires hung in the recycled air. Sound off, Jessica called, tasting blood where she'd bitten her tongue during the impact. Marcus here. Alive, mostly intact. Engineering section is flooded, but the hull seems to be holding. Lila, reporting in. Minor cuts and bruises. The laboratory section took some damage, but the specimen containment units are secure. Chen Weiming, present and accounted for. The sensor array is offline, but I'm reading massive energy signatures from the shoreline. Alexei here. Life support is functioning, but we're taking on water in the lower compartments. We need to evacuate soon. Jessica unbuckled herself and floated toward the main viewport. Outside, she could see they were indeed floating on an alien ocean under an alien sky. The water was a deep blue-green, and she could make out what appeared to be a shoreline in the distance. But what caught her attention were the lights, hundreds of bright points moving along the shore, too organized and purposeful to be anything but artificial. They know we're here, she said softly. The others gathered around the viewport, staring out at their first glimpse of an alien world. The sky was a pale lavender color, with wispy clouds that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. 2 small moons hung in the sky, their surfaces showing clear signs of artificial modification, geometric patterns and bright spots that could only be constructions. Look at those, Lila breathed, pointing at the moons. They've modified their entire satellite system. This is a Kardashev Type 2 civilization at minimum, which makes us very small and very vulnerable, Jessica said. All right, people. We need to establish communication protocols and prepare for first contact. This is what we trained for, even if the circumstances are less than ideal. Marcus wiped blood from a cut on his forehead. Do we have any functioning communications equipment? The short-range transmitters should work, Alexei said, but without knowing their communication frequencies or protocols. We start with mathematics, Chen suggested. Prime numbers, basic geometric constants. If they're a technological civilization, they'll recognize universal mathematical principles. Jessica nodded. Good. Chen, you and Marcus work on establishing communication. Lila, I want you to start documenting everything. Atmospheric readings, water samples if possible, any life signs. Alexei, assess our situation. How long can we stay aboard, and what do we need for a potential evacuation? Jessica, Lila said, her voice tight with excitement and fear. I'm reading biological signatures in the water around us. Complex ones. Jessica moved to Lila's station and peered at the display. The readings were unlike anything in their databases, organic compounds indicating not just life, but sophisticated, organized life. Intelligent aquatic species? Possibly. Or maybe they're investigating us the same way we're investigating them. A low, rhythmic sound began to emanate from outside the ship, a deep, musical tone that seemed to vibrate through the water and into their hull. It was followed by another tone, then another, building into a complex harmonic pattern that was clearly artificial. They're trying to communicate, Marcus said, looking up from his console. I'm recording the frequency patterns. This is definitely structured communication, not random noise. The tones continued for several minutes, then stopped. In the silence that followed, Jessica could hear the gentle lap of waves against their hull and the distant hum of what sounded like machinery from the direction of the shore. There, Chen said suddenly, pointing toward the shoreline. Something's coming. Through the viewport, they could see lights moving across the water toward them, not random points of light, but organized formations that suggested vessels of some kind. As they drew closer, Jessica began to make out shapes beneath the lights. Sleek, organic-looking craft that seemed to move through the water with impossible grace. How many? She asked. At least a dozen, Chen replied. They're surrounding us, but maintaining distance. Classic first contact protocol. They're as nervous about us as we are about them, Jessica realized. All right, everyone. This is it. First contact with an alien civilization. Remember your training. Follow my lead, and whatever happens, we represent all of humanity right now. The alien vessels arranged themselves in a perfect circle around the drifting human ship, their lights pulsing in slow, synchronized patterns. Then, as if responding to some unheard signal, they all stopped and waited. The silence stretched for long minutes, broken only by the sound of water and the distant hum of alien technology. Jessica felt the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. They were about to become the first humans to communicate with an alien intelligence, under circumstances none of them could have imagined. Marcus, she said finally, transmit the mathematical sequence. Prime numbers 1 through 20. Repeat it 3 times, then wait. Marcus nodded and activated their transmitter. The signal went out across the water, carrying humanity's first intentional message to another intelligent species. The response was immediate. One of the alien vessels pulsed its lights in a pattern that perfectly matched the mathematical sequence they had just transmitted. Then it added something new, a sequence of its own that Jessica recognized as the Fibonacci sequence. They understand, Chen whispered. They're mathematicians. More than that, Jessica said, watching as the light patterns became more complex. They're welcoming us. Look at the symmetry, the harmonic progression. This isn't just communication, it's art. The mathematical dialogue continued for nearly an hour, with both species demonstrating their understanding of increasingly complex concepts. The aliens showed familiarity with prime numbers, geometric constants, even the fundamental physical laws that govern the universe. But more than that, they displayed something that Jessica had never expected to find among the stars: curiosity. They want to learn about us as much as we want to learn about them, she said, watching the patterns evolve. This is incredible. Lila looked up from her biological sensors. Jessica, I'm detecting movement in the water. Large organisms approaching from below. Through the viewport, they could see shapes rising from the depths, massive forms that seemed to dwarf their ship. But as they drew closer, Jessica realized these weren't creatures at all. They were structures, artificial constructions that had emerged from underwater cities to investigate the newcomers. My God! Marcus breathed. They live beneath the ocean. The entire sea floor must be covered with their cities. One of the structures, a graceful spire that seemed to be grown rather than built, extended something toward their ship, a delicate, tendril-like appendage that moved with obvious intelligence. It approached their hull cautiously, almost tentatively, before making gentle contact with their outer skin. They're scanning us, Alexei said, watching his instruments. Very sophisticated technology. They're learning about our composition, our biology, maybe even our intentions. The contact lasted several minutes, then the tendril withdrew. In response, the lights on all the alien vessels began to pulse in a new pattern, one that seemed almost celebratory. I think, Jessica said slowly, they've decided we're friendly. The alien vessels escorted the drifting Meridian's Discovery toward the shoreline with a grace that spoke of centuries of maritime mastery. Jessica and her team watched in awe as their escorts revealed themselves more clearly in the brightening light of the alien sun. The vessels were living works of art, smooth, biomechanical constructions that seemed to blend organic curves with crystalline geometries. They moved through the water without any visible means of propulsion, as if the ocean itself was carrying them forward. Are you getting readings on their propulsion systems? Jessica asked Marcus. Nothing conventional. No heat signatures, no electromagnetic disturbances consistent with any technology we know. It's like they're manipulating the water at a molecular level. As they approached the shore, Jessica began to understand the true scope of the civilization they had encountered. What she had initially taken for a coastline was actually the edge of a vast floating city that extended both above and below the water's surface. Graceful spires twisted skyward like frozen lightning, their surfaces covered in patterns of light that pulsed with rhythmic beauty. Between them, connecting bridges and platforms created a three-dimensional maze of architecture that defied every principle of engineering Jessica knew. The entire structure is alive, Lila said, staring at her biological sensors in disbelief. I'm reading massive organic activity throughout the city. It's not just built, it's grown. Dr. Chen Weiming was frantically taking readings, his instruments struggling to process what they were seeing. The gravitational anomalies I detected earlier, they're coming from the city itself. Somehow, they've learned to manipulate local gravity fields. That's the only way those structures could maintain their integrity. Advanced biotechnology combined with gravitational engineering, Jessica murmured. We're not just looking at an alien civilization, we're looking at one that's evolved far beyond our current understanding of what's possible. Their ship was guided into what appeared to be a docking facility, a natural harbor formed by living coral-like structures that had grown into perfect geometric shapes. As they settled into position, Jessica could see movement throughout the city. Graceful figures moving along the bridges and platforms, their forms difficult to make out at distance but clearly intelligent and purposeful. Contact, Alexei announced. Something's extending from the dock toward our airlock. Through the external cameras, they could see a flexible, tube-like structure approaching their ship. It moved with organic fluidity, its surface shimmering with the same patterns of light they had seen on the vessels. As it reached their airlock, it formed a perfect seal, creating what appeared to be a pressurized tunnel between their ship and the alien dock. Atmospheric readings? Jessica asked. The tunnel contains the same atmosphere we've been breathing, Lila reported. They've somehow analyzed our needs and provided exactly what we require. The pressure is perfect, the gas mixture is ideal. It's like they've created a custom environment just for us. Jessica made her decision. All right, people. We're going to make contact. Standard first contact protocols, peaceful intentions, scientific curiosity, respect for their culture. Marcus, you're with me. Chun, Lila, Alexei, monitor from here and be ready to provide support. Jessica, Marcus said as they prepared to exit their ship. We don't know anything about their biology, their social structures, their concept of threat or friendship. We could inadvertently cause a diplomatic incident that affects humanity's entire future relationship with this species. Then we'd better not screw it up. Jessica replied with a smile that didn't hide her nervousness. Come on. History is waiting. The airlock cycled open, and Jessica Chun became the first human being to step onto an alien world. The sensation was surreal. The tunnel's floor was soft and warm beneath her feet, like walking on living tissue, and the walls pulsed gently with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to respond to their presence. The air smelled of ozone and something floral, not unpleasant but utterly foreign. As they walked through the tunnel, Jessica could feel the weight of the moment. Every step was a step into the unknown, every breath a breath of alien air, every heartbeat marking humanity's transformation from a single-world species to something greater. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber that took Jessica's breath away. The space was enormous, easily the size of a cathedral, but it felt organic rather than constructed. The walls curved and flowed like the inside of a shell, their surfaces covered in patterns of living light that created an atmosphere of serene beauty. Pools of crystal-clear water dotted the floor, and from them grew structures that looked like trees made of coral and light. And waiting for them, arranged in a perfect semicircle, were the architects of this impossible place. Jessica's first thought was that they were beautiful. The aliens stood roughly her height, their forms humanoid but clearly adapted for both aquatic and terrestrial life. Their skin was a shifting pattern of blues and greens that seemed to respond to their emotions, and their limbs were elongated and graceful, ending in hands that had 6 fingers each. Most striking were their heads, elongated and elegant, with large eyes that swirled with patterns of light, and gill slits along their necks that opened and closed rhythmically. But what struck Jessica most profoundly was their obvious intelligence. She could see it in the way they held themselves, in the complex patterns of light that played across their skin, in the careful way they had arranged themselves to appear welcoming rather than threatening. One of them stepped forward, slightly taller than the others, with more complex light patterns cascading across its skin. When it spoke, the sound was like music, a complex harmony of tones that conveyed meaning through rhythm and frequency rather than words. They're trying to communicate, Marcus whispered. But I don't think vocal language is their primary method. Jessica nodded, then did something that felt right at a level deeper than logic. She stepped forward and, keeping her movements slow and deliberate, placed her hand over her heart, and then extended it toward the aliens in a gesture of peaceful greeting. The effect was immediate. The alien skin patterns shifted to brighter, more complex displays, and several of them made gestures that seemed to mirror her own. The leader approached closer and, after a moment's hesitation, reached out with one of its elongated hands. Jessica extended her own hand, and when they touched, the world exploded into light and sensation. Suddenly, she was seeing through alien eyes, experiencing the world through senses she had never imagined. She could feel the electromagnetic patterns that flowed through the living city, could sense the thoughts and emotions of the beings around her, could perceive layers of reality that human senses had never evolved to detect. And through it all, she felt something that transcended species and biology: wonder. These beings were explorers, scientists, artists. They had built their civilization not to conquer or consume, but to understand and create. Their technology was so advanced that it had become indistinguishable from art, their society so sophisticated that individual and collective consciousness had learned to merge and separate like movements in a symphony. The contact lasted only moments, but when it ended, Jessica felt fundamentally changed. She looked at the alien leader with new understanding, seeing in its swirling eyes the same curiosity and excitement that had driven her to become a scientist. "You're explorers," she said aloud, knowing somehow that they would understand her meaning if not her words. "Just like us." The alien's response was a complex pattern of lights that somehow conveyed agreement, welcome, and an invitation to learn more. Around them, the other aliens began to move, gesturing toward different areas of the chamber where Jessica could see displays of what appeared to be scientific instruments and artistic creations. "Jessica," Marcus said softly, "I think they want to show us their world." As they moved deeper into the chamber, Jessica began to understand that what she was seeing was more than just advanced technology. It was a completely different approach to existence. These beings, whom she mentally began to call the Aquarians, had evolved past the human obsession with individual achievement and competitive advancement. Their society was collaborative at a level that made human cooperation look primitive by comparison. They were shown displays of the Aquarians' history, holographic representations that flowed through the air like living memories. Jessica watched in fascination as the story unfolded, a species that had evolved in the oceans of their world, developing intelligence and technology while maintaining their connection to the natural environment. Rather than conquering their planet, they had learned to work with it, growing their cities from living coral, powering their technology with biological processes, and expanding not by destroying but by creating. "Look at this," Marcus whispered, pointing to a display that showed the planet from orbit. "The entire world is one integrated system. Their cities, their technology, their ecosystem, it's all connected." The Aquarian leader noticed their interest and gestured toward another display. This one showed other worlds, other star systems, all connected by what appeared to be some kind of faster-than-light communication network. Jessica realized with growing amazement that the Aquarians were not just a planetary civilization, they were part of a galactic community. "They're not alone," she breathed. "There are others." The implications hit her like a physical blow. Humanity had spent decades searching for signs of intelligent life, never imagining that there was already a vast community of species exploring the galaxy together. And now, through pure chance, they had stumbled into contact with one of them. The Aquarian leader seemed to understand her amazement. It gestured toward a new display, one that showed a small, blue-green planet orbiting a yellow star. Earth. They had been monitoring human civilization, watching their development, waiting for the moment when humanity would be ready for contact. "You've been waiting for us," Jessica said, understanding flooding through her. "All this time, you've been waiting for us to be ready." The leader's skin pattern shifted to what Jessica was beginning to recognize as affirmation. Then it gestured toward the entrance of the chamber, where more Aquarians had gathered. But these were different. Their forms showed variations that suggested they came from different environments, possibly even different worlds. "Jessica," Marcus said, his voice filled with awe, "I think we're about to be introduced to the galactic community." The Aquarian leader guided Jessica and Marcus through a series of interconnected chambers, each more breathtaking than the last. The living architecture seemed to respond to their presence, walls shifting to create optimal viewing angles and floors growing subtle paths to guide their steps. Jessica realized that the entire city was not just alive but intelligent, a massive organism that had been designed to facilitate communication and understanding between different species. "This is beyond anything we imagined," Marcus whispered as they passed through a corridor where the walls displayed flowing images of distant star systems. "They've created a living embassy for interspecies contact." Their guide led them into a vast amphitheater where representatives from dozens of different species had gathered. Jessica stopped at the threshold, overwhelmed by the diversity of intelligent life arranged before her. Some were humanoid like the Aquarians, others were radically different, crystalline beings that chimed with musical communication, gaseous entities contained within technological frameworks, insect creatures with multifaceted eyes that sparkled with obvious intelligence. "My God!" Marcus breathed. "How many species are there?" The Aquarian leader's skin patterns shifted in what Jessica was learning to interpret as gentle amusement. It gestured toward the center of the amphitheater, where a holographic display showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of points of light indicated inhabited worlds, connected by flowing lines that represented communication and trade networks. "The galaxy is alive," Jessica said, understanding flooding through her. "Intelligent life isn't rare, we just weren't ready to see it yet." A new being approached them, tall and ethereal, with skin that seemed to be made of living starlight. When it communicated, its thoughts appeared directly in Jessica's mind, translated somehow by the Aquarian technology or perhaps by the beings themselves. Welcome, children of Earth. We have been watching your species with great interest. You have finally taken your first steps into the larger community. Jessica found herself responding not with words but with thoughts, the communication flowing as naturally as speech. How long have you been watching us? Since your species first began to use tools. We monitor all developing civilizations, waiting for the moment when they become ready for contact. Not all species survive to this point. Some destroy themselves with their own technology, others become stagnant and cease to grow. But your species has shown remarkable resilience and curiosity. The being gestured toward the holographic display, which zoomed in to show Earth and its immediate stellar neighborhood. Your arrival here was not entirely accidental. When we detected the failure of your vessel, we influenced local gravitational fields to guide you to this world. We hoped that the crisis might serve as the catalyst for first contact. Marcus stepped forward, his scientific mind grappling with the implications. You manipulated our trajectory? You could have saved us at any time? We could have prevented your ship's damage, yes. But premature contact often does more harm than good. Your species needed to come to us as explorers, not as refugees. The circumstances of first contact shaped the entire future relationship between species. Jessica felt a complex mix of emotions, gratitude for their survival, anger at the manipulation, and awe at the sophisticated understanding of psychology and sociology that the intervention demonstrated. What happens now? What do you want from us? The stellar being's response carried undertones of what could only be described as warmth. We want nothing from you that you are not ready to give. The galactic community is not a hierarchy or an empire. It is a voluntary association of species who have chosen to share knowledge, resources, and friendship across the stars. We invite humanity to join us, but the choice is entirely yours. Around the amphitheater, other beings began to communicate, their thoughts flowing into Jessica's consciousness like a gentle tide. She learned of species that had transcended physical form, living as pure consciousness within quantum fields. Others had chosen to merge with their technology, becoming hybrid beings that could reshape matter at the molecular level. Some, like the Aquarians, had found harmony between biology and technology, creating civilizations that grew rather than built. But perhaps most remarkably, she learned that conflict, while not unknown, was incredibly rare among the galactic species. Not because they lacked passion or disagreement, but because they had evolved beyond the zero-sum thinking that dominated human politics and economics. When resources are infinite, and knowledge is freely shared, there is no reason for conflict, explained a being that appeared to be made of living crystal. The galaxy is vast enough for every species to find their own path to fulfillment. Jessica thought of Earth, of wars fought over resources, of nations competing for advantage, of the environmental destruction caused by humanity's relentless expansion. How do we learn to think beyond our limitations? How do we become worthy of joining you? You already have begun, the Aquarian leader interjected. Your species' art, your music, your stories, these show a capacity for empathy and imagination that is essential for galactic citizenship. Your science, despite its youth, demonstrates the curiosity and dedication to truth that drives all advanced civilizations. The stellar being added, most importantly, you have individuals like yourselves, scientists who risk everything in pursuit of knowledge, who can look beyond their own species and see the wonder of the universe itself. You will return to Earth as ambassadors, preparing your people for the choice that awaits them. What if humanity isn't ready? Jessica asked. What if we choose isolation or try to use your technology for destructive purposes? Then you will be left to develop at your own pace, came the response. The galaxy is patient. Some species take thousands of years to reach readiness. Others, like yours, surprise us with their rapid growth. There is no judgment, only understanding. Marcus asked the question that had been troubling Jessica as well. Our ship is damaged beyond our ability to repair. How do we return to Earth to share what we've learned? The Aquarian leader's skin pattern shifted to what Jessica now recognized as reassurance. Through the translation system, she felt its response. Your vessel can be repaired using our biotechnological methods. But more than that, we will provide you with communication technology that will allow Earth to contact the galactic community when your species is ready. The choice to make contact must come from humanity as a whole, not from a few individuals, the stellar being added. You will return with knowledge and tools, but the decision to use them must be made by your entire species through whatever means your culture deems appropriate. Over the following days, or what Jessica assumed were days in the strange, twilight world of the Aquarian city, they were given a comprehensive introduction to galactic civilization. They learned of the Consortium of Worlds, a loose federation of thousands of species who shared knowledge and resources across interstellar distances. They discovered technologies that seemed like magic, matter converters that could transform any element into any other, consciousness transfer systems that allowed individuals to explore different physical forms, time dilation fields that could slow or accelerate the passage of time within specific areas. But most importantly, they learned about the philosophy that underpinned it all. The galactic species had discovered what humans had only begun to glimpse, that consciousness was the fundamental force of the universe, that intelligence and creativity were the tools by which reality itself evolved toward greater complexity and beauty. The universe is not just alive, one of the beings explained during a particularly profound session, it is awakening. Each species that achieves consciousness and joins the greater community contributes to that awakening. Your species, with its unique perspective and remarkable adaptability, has much to offer. Lila, Chen, and Alexei were eventually brought to the city to witness the wonders firsthand. Jessica watched her colleagues' faces as they experienced their first mind-to-mind contact with alien intelligence, seeing in their expressions the same wonder and transformation she had felt. "This changes everything," Lila whispered after her first communication session. "Not just our understanding of the universe, but our understanding of what it means to be alive, to be conscious." Dr. Chen Weiming was particularly fascinated by the gravitational manipulation technology. "They're not just bending space-time," he explained to the others after spending a day with Aquarian physicists. "They're collaborating with it. Consciousness and physics aren't separate phenomena, they're different aspects of the same fundamental reality." Alexei, meanwhile, had fallen in love with the biotechnological systems that maintained the city. "Every system is alive, intelligent, capable of growth and adaptation. It's not maintenance, it's symbiosis. The city and its inhabitants have evolved together into something greater than either could be alone." As their time in the city drew to a close, Jessica found herself facing the greatest responsibility any human had ever carried. She would return to Earth bearing knowledge that could transform human civilization, or destroy it if misused. The choice of how to share that knowledge, and whether to share it at all, would rest with her and her team. The Aquarian leader approached her on their final day, its patterns conveying something that felt like paternal concern. "You are troubled by the weight of what you have learned. How do we return to a world of competition and conflict and convince people to think beyond their immediate needs?" Jessica responded. "How do we explain that the universe is full of friends we never knew existed?" "The same way every species has learned," came the gentle reply. "One individual at a time, one conversation at a time, one moment of wonder at a time. Change begins with understanding, and understanding begins with the willingness to see beyond oneself." The being paused, its patterns shifting to something deeper. "Your species stands at a crossroads that every intelligent civilization must eventually face. You can choose to remain isolated, to continue the patterns of behavior that have brought you to this point. Or you can choose to grow beyond your limitations and join something larger than yourselves. And if we choose wrong? There is no wrong choice, only different paths. But know this, the universe is vast and full of wonders beyond your current imagination. The choice you make will determine whether humanity explores those wonders alone or as part of a community that has been waiting millions of years to welcome you home." The Meridian's discovery bore little resemblance to the ship that had crashed into the alien ocean weeks earlier. The Aquarians had not simply repaired it, they had transformed it into something that bridged human and galactic technology. The hull now pulsed with the same bioluminescent patterns that decorated their cities, living metal that could heal itself and adapt to different environments. The engines had been replaced with systems that Jessica's team could barely comprehend, devices that manipulated space-time itself to achieve faster-than-light travel. "It's beautiful," Marcus said, running his hand along a control panel that responded to his touch with gentle warmth. "But I have no idea how any of it works." The Aquarian engineer who had overseen the conversion communicated through the translation interface. "Understanding will come with time. Your species learns rapidly. For now, it is enough that you can operate the system safely." Jessica stood in what had once been their communication center, now transformed into something that looked more like a garden than a technological installation. Organic crystalline structures grew from the floor and walls, their faceted surfaces displaying information about stellar positions, galactic communication networks, and something called the Confluence, a meeting point where representatives from different species could gather for trade and diplomacy. "Are you sure we can manage this alone?" Chen Weiming asked, studying the navigation system with a mixture of fascination and concern that had become his default expression since their arrival. "The ship will guide you," the engineer assured them. "It is now partially alive, capable of learning and adaptation. It will ensure your safe return to Earth and serve as your primary means of contact with the galactic community." Dr. Okafor was documenting everything, her scientific training warring with the impossibility of what she was recording. "Jessica, how do we explain this to Earth? How do we convince anyone that this is real and not some elaborate shared hallucination?" "We start with the evidence," Jessica replied, though she knew it wouldn't be that simple. "We have samples of alien technology, recordings of our communications, documentation of discoveries that no human mind could have invented." But even as she said it, Jessica knew that evidence alone wouldn't be enough. What they had experienced went far beyond mere scientific discovery. It was a fundamental shift in humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. And such shifts had never come easily to her species. The Aquarian leader joined them for their departure ceremony, its patterns conveying what Jessica had learned to recognize as deep affection and concern. "You carry a great burden," it communicated. "The knowledge you bear could elevate your species or divide it. We have seen both outcomes among other worlds. What advice can you give us?" Jessica asked. "Share the wonder first, the technology second. Help your people understand that they are not alone in the universe, that consciousness and intelligence are the galaxy's greatest treasures. Fear diminishes when faced with beauty and hope." The being gestured toward the holographic display that now dominated their main viewing area. It showed Earth, small, blue, and achingly beautiful in its isolation. "Your world is precious not because it is unique, but because it is home to minds capable of growth and transformation. Help your people see themselves as we see them, not as a species struggling for survival, but as consciousness learning to understand itself." As the Meridian's discovery prepared for departure, representatives from dozens of galactic species came to offer their farewells. Each shared some gift of knowledge or technology: encryption algorithms that could protect quantum communication, biotechnology that could heal environmental damage, artistic techniques that could help humans express concepts beyond their current language. But the most valuable gift was simpler and more profound: the knowledge that they were not alone, had never been alone, and that the universe was far more wonderful and full of potential friendship than they had ever dared to imagine. The journey back to Earth took subjective months but objective years, as their new propulsion system folded space around them in ways that made conventional physics seem quaint. During the voyage, Jessica and her team worked to compile their experiences into a comprehensive report that could serve as humanity's introduction to galactic civilization. "We need to be careful about how we present this," Jessica said during one of their daily planning sessions. "Release too much too fast, and will cause panic. Release too little, and will be dismissed as delusional. The technology alone will be convincing," Marcus argued. "Some of these biomechanical interfaces could revolutionize medicine and engineering. And weapons technology," Alexei added grimly. "We need to consider how governments might try to use what we've learned." Lila looked up from her biological samples, organisms from the Aquarian world that defied every category in Earth's taxonomic system. Maybe that's why the galactic species are so careful about first contact. They've seen what happens when advanced technology gets into the wrong hands. Chen Weiming, who had been quietly working on gravitational equations that could barely be expressed in human mathematics, shook his head. I don't think it's about right or wrong hands. I think it's about readiness. A species either understands that consciousness and cooperation are more powerful than competition and control, or they don't. There's no middle ground. The conversations continued for weeks, as they slowly approached the edge of the solar system. Through their new communication array, they could monitor Earth's electromagnetic emissions, news broadcasts, internet traffic, satellite communications. From their perspective, humanity looked like a species in transition, capable of great creativity and compassion but still struggling with the primitive instincts that had once been necessary for survival. We're going to change everything, Jessica said one day, watching Earth grow larger in their viewport. The moment we reveal what we've learned, human civilization will never be the same. Maybe that's not a bad thing, Marcus replied. Look at what we've become just from a few weeks of contact. We're already thinking differently about consciousness, about technology, about our place in the universe. It was true. Jessica could feel the change in herself and her colleagues. They moved with a grace that hadn't been there before, thought in patterns that encompassed larger concepts and longer time scales. They had touched something vast and benevolent in the galaxy, and it had touched them in return. As they entered Earth's solar system, their ship automatically began transmitting recognition codes to prevent it from being mistaken for an asteroid or enemy vessel. But Jessica knew that the moment they made contact with Earth authorities, a chain of events would begin that could lead anywhere. Final approach to Earth, Chen announced. All systems functioning normally. The ship is requesting permission to land at the coordinates we specify. Jessica made her decision. Take us to the International Space Consortium facility in Kazakhstan. If we're going to do this, we do it right. Full diplomatic protocols, complete transparency with the international community. As the Earth grew larger in their viewport, Jessica thought about the Aquarian leader's words about sharing wonder before technology. She thought about the beings they had met, consciousnesses that had transcended the limitations of single-world thinking and found joy in the infinite diversity of galactic civilization. And she thought about humanity's choice, to remain isolated in fear and competition, or to grow beyond their current limitations and join a community that had been waiting millions of years to welcome them home. The choice would not be hers alone to make. But she and her team would be the ones to present it, to share the wonder they had discovered among the stars, and to help their species understand that the next great step in human evolution was not technological or biological. It was consciousness itself learning to think beyond the boundaries of a single world. As their ship touched down on the launch pad where their journey had begun over a year earlier, Jessica Chen prepared to become humanity's first ambassador to the galaxy, knowing that the conversation she was about to begin would echo through history and determine whether Earth would remain a lonely island of consciousness or join the vast symphony of minds that filled the universe with wonder and possibility. The stars were waiting. The choice was humanity's to make.